No, that can't. That can't.
What? What just happened?
What shape is hair now? What did you steal from me?
He's got actually, it is right now buzzed all around except for it's not totally flat top. I haven't seen him in a week though. All right, people, ladies and gentlemen, y'all better get ready for World War III. Whoa, I meant two. What movie did I get that from? These people better get ready for World War III. You've seen it. You've seen it. You've seen it. Rocky IV. When they're about to, the announcer, as they're about to start the fight against the Russian, they better get ready for World War III.
Wait, is that one Apollo fight?
At the beginning, dancing around, living in America. Then he gets pummeled. All right, WW2. We started yesterday our study of the big one, WW2. World War I was the war to end all wars. Found out just 20 years later that wasn't true. World War I had the initial moniker as the Great War. This war unfortunately becomes even quote unquote not meant like the word great, not meaning good. Greater, bigger, larger, the big one, some people would call it. The people that fought World War II, we have all these names from generations, which I don't generally like. Like, we're always trying to put people in boxes. Did you ever notice, Emily? Right? Like, dividing everybody up by races and everything. And so then we divide them up by generation, like, as if a millennial, like, they all act the same. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, that's a millennial, okay? It's a person. They all have different personalities, right? But this is known as, does anybody know what this generation's called? The what? The greatest generation. Very good. They're called the greatest generation because of their fight that they had to endure. They had to endure the Great Depression, and right on the heels of that, had to endure World War II, which was the biggest large-scale war in history. And the people that fought that got us through that. And after that, great prosperity came back to America. So that's why they have that name, the greatest generation. We talked about his anti-Semitism roots, right? How he kind of like got indoctrinated by this, like it was running rampant. And by the way, this happens periodically through history. You know it from your Bible study that the Jews have been easy for whatever reason, well, because of God's chosen, the target of people for thousands of years, right? And every once in a while, even in America, we got to pay attention and listen for sounds of this. It's just kind of like a cyclical thing, it seems, through history. It rises and falls, like anti-Semitism becomes stronger in some cases. Well, it was growing really strong as we had, and we're in the middle of World War I, especially in Europe, and especially then in Germany. And tell me how far we got.
Right there.
Right there. We see that Hitler, after his the war's over and his participation in the war, that in one of his first speeches, as he's kind of becoming a leader in this German Workers' Party, it's in quotes because it is the gist of what he said. So this isn't his exact quote. I need to say that the Jewish presence is a race tuberculosis of the peoples. So that hatred for Jews. In other words, listen, if there was an outbreak of tuberculosis, that would be a pretty dangerous thing. People would be kind of worried about it. It's one of those diseases that most of you were probably inoculated. Fancy word for vaccine, so we don't have to worry about the spread of TB, but it still is a worry. Okay, that brings us to 1923. So of course, 4 years later, what's going on? What's going on in these 4 years? Adolf Hitler is becoming more and more involved, becoming more and more a leader. People are starting to listen to his ideas more and more. So by 1923, he gets involved and one of the leaders in something called, kind of got a weird name, the Beer Hall Push. I say push, I don't know how you say that in German. How do you say that in German? Push? What is it? Push. The Beer Hall Push or Push. And what it was is, did you guys learn geography in Germany? So in a place called Bavaria, this group of worker socialists, basically, because remember, the German Workers' Party later becomes the National Socialist Party, which then we say are Nazis. They've got this idea that they're going to storm the government of Bavaria, take over that region, and then, of course, that would lead to taking over all of Germany. Well, that attempted coup didn't work. Everybody know what the word coup means? There's a vocab word for you. Coup means overthrow of the government. You may have even heard that word, like people, so silly, and how dramatic again we get, and how divisive our culture is. That what happened on January 6th last year was like some kind of attempted coup. No, when there's a coup, like people have weapons and stuff, right? They're like actually trying to overthrow the government. Big difference than what happened January 6th of 2021. We get so hyper and exaggerate things so much today to just cause more division. Anyway, so this attempted coup didn't work. Hitler gets arrested. Hitler gets imprisoned for a year. Now, actually, that's kind of a light sentence. I mean, you literally tried to overthrow the government. Armed. Going to take over government buildings. So he gets imprisoned for treason. Does anybody know the ultimate penalty for treason against the United States? What's that? Yeah. That's a capital offense. He only served prison 1 year. That's a whole other story. Treason is acting in a way that either you go against your country or here's a phrase for you, you aid or abet the enemy. You ever heard that phrase before? Aiding and abetting. You are either actively involved in overthrowing the government or you are aiding in overthrowing the government. While he's in prison, anybody ever heard of Mein Kampf before? Okay, his of all the writings he did, this is the most notorious. This is the most well known. He actually started writing this while he was in prison. He didn't finish it yet, but while he's in prison, he writes something that he entitles "My Struggle," Mein Kampf, and in this book, he describes the gist of it is what he desires for a new united Germany. So what do we got going on as you're finishing this slide of notes? We've got this young man who is kind of like a loser, right? Today we'd say, what a loser. He's not successful in anything. He drifts from place to place. He runs out of money. This isn't in your notes, but his dad had an inheritance set up for him, so he uses some of that inheritance. That runs out. His aunt had an inheritance for him, so he uses that money. That runs out because he's basically, like today we would say, he's like 25 living in his mom's basement playing video games or something, right? He can't seem to make it. He thinks he's an artist. He can't make it into the big art school, so he's like an angry guy, and it's always someone else's fault. Oh, by the way, we can just blame everything on the Jews, right? He's learned that anti-Semitism that's kind of being ingrained in him. So all of that is happening. So he's writing, and he's thinking of, you know what? What if I was like? He's becoming more of a leader. Again, the military gave him that platform. So he was a good soldier. So he's becoming a leader after the military. He's a leader in this party. He's a good speaker. He's finding out, hey, when I speak, people listen. So he's being emboldened by that. And he writes My Struggle for a New Germany. Okay. And this is what he wants. This is what Hitler wants for this new Germany. First of all, no commies and no Jews. We've got to get rid of communists and Jews. What happened in 1917 in Russia, right in the middle of the war? We just did World War I last month. What happened? Right in the middle of the war, what happened in Russia? Anyone? Yeah. The Bolshevik Revolution. The communists. The people that were going by the teachings of Karl Marx, the Marxists, the socialists / communists, took over in Russia. And by the way, Russia was an enemy of Germany, right? That was going on in World War I. Hitler does not like this whole communist idea, which is going to sound a little strange to you because oftentimes we say socialist and communist in the same vein. But the differences here have to do more, not so much with economics as they do with other aspects of government. For instance, one of them being war. All right, so he doesn't want any commies or any Jews in this new Germany. Remember, you need to unite Germany because Germany's so fractured. The economy's in shambles. When things aren't going well, people start pointing fingers. Think of athletic teams. Why do teams fall apart? Something goes wrong, we start pointing fingers. That person's to blame, that person's to blame, coach is to blame, quarterback to blame, receivers to blame, whatever, right? So then the team falls apart. The country's falling apart. The country's in shambles economically. Somebody needs to come in and fix it. Here's this guy. He keeps growing in stature, not physically. He might have little man syndrome too. But he keeps growing in stature, keeps getting more confidence. People start listening to him more and more. So he puts out these ideas. You know what? You know what Germany needs? Remember, this is the 1900s, and this American idea of individual liberty has spread throughout the world over the last 150 years. Every country in Europe, and well, except Russia because the Bolsheviks took over, but most of the countries in Europe are desiring quote unquote democratic government. Hitler says, you know what? What we actually need is dictatorship. We need a powerful force to come in and fix Germany's problems. These democratic ideas where everybody gets a say and we toss around all these ideas. No, that's not working. You know, there's some people in America today that think that's what America needs. I've heard people on radio shows. Thankfully, it's a minority of people, but there are some people in America today that think, you know, the only thing that's really going to fix everything's ailing us is we just need to give one person power to fix it. Because the way it's going now, it ain't working. We've got too much division. How are we going to, and if you think about it, history, 6,000 plus years, have been ruled by dictators and kings and queens, right? Because that's how people stay unified. That was one of the things that the founders knew. That was one of the pitfalls of democracy. You know, when they were setting up the greatest government ever devised by man, one of the things they talked about was, how's this going to work? I mean, we're really embarking on the great experiment. How is this going to work? How is this not going to fall like all the other democracies through history back into tyranny? Hitler says we need dictatorship. We need to rebuild our military. Guess what was one of the aspects of the Treaty of Versailles? Remember that? After World War I, everything got blamed on Germany. What do we got to do? We got to rebuild our military. The Treaty of Versailles said, oh, no, you're not. That was one of the stipulations. Germany, not only are you to blame for the World War I, not only do you have to pay for it, but we're going to keep careful watch and make sure you don't try to rebuild your military again. You were the whole reason. Your militarism, remember the main causes of World War I? Your militarism and your nationalism and your imperialism and your alliance with Austria-Hungary, you're the reason that we had World War I. We're not letting you rebuild your military. imperialism. Hitler says, you know what? We need a dictator that comes in, cleans house, rebuilds the military, tells the world, we're taking back the land that we lost. The land that's rightfully Germany's to the east of Germany, we're taking it back. These are his ideas. And in German, anybody know German? How do you say that? Lebensraum? It's translated living space. Hitler says we are gonna give ourselves some living space. The German people should be dominating the world, by the way. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna expand to the east. All the lands that have been taken from us from these wars, even to the west with France, we're gonna reclaim all of those. We're going to cleanse Germany of inferior races. Of course, the Jews. And then we have a different vision when we think of this thing, gypsies. Usually when someone talks about a gypsy today, they're kind of talking about someone's kind of like I don't know, they just have no purpose in life, they just wander. Yeah.
Is this like the Polish or Russian people?
Yeah. And
It's like Russia was against Germany.
Mhm. So we got to get rid of the Jews and the gypsies first, and then of course, next on the list are going to be blacks, and then it's going to come down to we're going to create one quote unquote perfect race based on the Aryan race. We'll start with the Jews and the gypsies, and then we'll move and get rid of all the others. Which, by the way, he wasn't one. All right, so it seems like a lot of notes, but you imagine all the stuff that's happening that we're not even talking about. But time goes by, the Nazi Party, as he's rising up in leadership with the Nazi Party gains power. And here's kind of a overview of what the Nazi Party was all about. Hitler started to surround himself with, you can almost call it like his own personal secret police. They were called, and I say stormtroopers, everybody's going to think of Star Wars. They were called stormtroopers, or some people would call them brown shirts because their uniform was a brown shirt and a brown tie. And their job was to intimidate any opposition. So again, he must have been a very good communicator. And listen, why would people buy his ideas, these radical ideas? Because they're desperate. When people are desperate or they don't feel secure, they will fall for anything. I go back to that basic premise, liberty or security. If you don't feel safe, you will give up liberty so that you will feel safe. And he preys on what's going on in Germany because people want, hey, who wouldn't want to hear that? Who wouldn't want to hear if you were in Germany and you were suffering through, we think inflation's bad now. We're hearing about this word inflation in the United States, price rate. It was out of control in Germany, way worse than we have it right now. Who wouldn't want to hear some person rise up and say, that's it, we're bringing an end to this. Germany will rise again. You got a waiting audience for someone like that to rise up. And if anybody tried to go against them, these people will show up at your door. Or maybe they show up at your mama's door. Whatever it took to get you to, you're trying to go against what the Nazi Party is trying to get going here in Germany, you might get a visit from the brown shirts. Well, jump ahead to 1928. It's the first election that the Nazis have any success. That's not very successful. So again, we're talking about 5 years went by, right? So there's a lot of things going on. In those 5 years, it's a slow process of Hitler gaining more and more power, using these brown shirts to intimidate people that were going against them, and they get less than 3% of the vote. That's no big deal. They're barely on the radar, right? But things are going to start happening much more quickly. In 1930, they jumped to 20% vote. By the way, 20% sounds low. You know why it sounds low? Because we live in a two-party system. In America, you're either a Republican or a Democrat. So if one of those parties got 20% of the vote, that is awful. Hello? That means the other guy got 80%. That is not the way politics work, and not just Germany, but a lot of other places in the world. They have many more than two parties. Like even today. Does anybody have German now? Maybe you could ask Mrs. Bell how many political parties they have. They don't have just two parties. They have what's called a coalition government. So they'll have like today, Germany has like a patriotic party, a green party. You know what I mean by green party? You know, worried about all the climate stuff. Then they'll have a I think one of them's called the Christian Democrats. So that's one, all bunch of different parties. And what they do is they'll say, hey, when it comes to voting on stuff, we'll align with your group, and we'll form a coalition where we'll get a majority of the votes. So 20% is a really big deal. And by the way, adding to everything that was going on already in Germany, hello, remember we said the Great Depression wasn't just in the United States, this was worldwide. So you got Germany's in shambles throughout the 20s, and now the Depression hits. Do you think Hitler, with his message, is going to pick up more support? Yes. Yes. It's the people of Germany are hungering and, hungering and thirsting for someone like him to come along and say, it's us against the world. Again, to be a sports analogy, that's something the sports teams use. If you can get everybody on the team to get a chip on their shoulder and say, it's us against the world, it's kind of a motivating factor, right? You ever heard about that? 1932, what did I just say? It was not a two-party system. Many parties. 37%. The Nazi Party is now the largest party in German politics. You know what that word means again? I just said it, coalition style. It's not just two parties. It's my party forming a coalition with his party and her party, and we form a partnership when it comes to voting for things. We might have different issues, but we find some common ground, and that's our coalition. And these coalitions sometimes change, right? Like sometimes the Green Party will break away from one of the other parties and form a new coalition. And who the leadership is, or how economics change. 1933. What's that? I don't know why I put a parenthesis there. 1933, because of all the success the Nazi Party had, I think what I was going to put in parentheses there was Germany. Another thing about them, they have a president. They had a president, and then they had a chancellor. Not exactly a vice president. Anyway, don't want to get too much into that, but he's named chancellor. That's a very high-ranking government position. In 1933, he's named that by someone that's not part of the Nazi Party. His name was Hindenburg. Not, he didn't build the Hindenburg disaster, but that's a name in Germany. What was named after. But anyway, he's like he's the president of Germany. And he's kind of forced politically, because of all the success the Nazis had, to name Hitler as chancellor. So now Hitler, now he is being like, he's got a real audience. And in 1934, then, Hitler takes all that power he's amassing. Goodbye, Hindenburg. Goodbye, any president. Hello, I am the Fuhrer. I am your leader. I am the leader. From now on, I am the leader of Germany. No more democracy. No more sharing of power. Here's your coalition. Join the Nazi Party or else. And remember, the stormtroopers, the brown shirts, anyone that is trying to go secretly against the party, you're really putting yourself at risk. So two things going on, intimidation, and then you gotta, so some people are just gonna support them because they're afraid not to. And you got another group of people, they're gonna support them because rah, rah, yeah, let's go. It's us against the world. Questions on Hitler? Hopefully you learned something new, rather than he was just like, hey, he was the leader that killed all the Jews. How did that happen? We kind of tried to outline for you how this man came to be the face of evil in the 20th century. Just a short little snippet of the incredible crowds. Could you hit the lights? Ah. And look, one of the ways you show unity, everybody's dressed the same. Everything's done exactly the same. Everything's uniform. How do you greet him? You know, you've seen this kind of thing, right? That becomes universal. Basically making the guy like a god figure. You know what I'm saying? Let's all stand there. Instead of singing the national anthem, we're like singing praises to the Fuhrer. Instead of Hail, Lord Jesus, Hail Hitler. Now look, you're in 2022 America. You know everything that's happened. You're like not impressed. I'm not impressed. Whatever he's saying there, I don't know if you're in German, you can understand what he's saying. It's very impressive, those people. Hear him roaring with his impassioned speech.
What do you guys do in German? Like that kick? Yeah, what do you do? You should know this.
If you remember in fifth grade, which I know you don't, but I wouldn't even show you this in fifth grade, because if you remember when you were young and immature, you would love to, like, your favorite chapters in history would learn about war. That might still be true, and that doesn't mean necessarily you're immature, but like you love studying war. Like there's something about us that, like, especially young boys, I guess, maybe the girls didn't like it so much, but like we like learning about war. You with me? Isn't it a popular thing to learn about? Wars? You don't want to learn about the like boring stuff. You want to get to the wars. And something that I need to speak of is I wouldn't even show this symbol in fifth grade, because what happens through, and not just my experience in teaching, but even when I was a kid, this, again, it's not just that you like to learn about war. There's this kind of like, I don't know the psychological term for it, but we're kind of like, we wouldn't say we agree with it, but you catch kids drawing the swastika. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? Would you play with a Ouija board? I know it's two different things. One of them is an actual spiritual thing, but why would you draw swastikas? You think it's funny? You think it's funny to draw a swastika, the symbol associated with a man that killed 6 million Jews and many million of other races and belief systems? You understand what I'm saying? So please don't do that. I mean, I think I've seen in this school somewhere, I forget where it was. I think it was backstage somewhere. Somebody had carved a swastika in this. Again, the kid, whoever did it, probably doesn't really believe in Nazi Germany, but it's kind of like, are you following me? It's like a cool thing to do because you're young and don't really understand what you're doing. But, you see that face, I hope you have a little distaste in your mouth. Like, that's the face of evil. This is the uniform, by the way, of the stormtroopers. You wouldn't want to see that, whoever's in that uniform showing up at your door or your loved one's door. And of course, the Nazi symbol everywhere, even we noticed it on the video of the Hindenburg, right? And if you were in Germany, this thing being, there's that big word again, ubiquitous, you couldn't avoid it. And if you tried to avoid it, what's going to happen? You'd be persecuted. You need to fall in line with the teachings of Hitler. And he was that powerful. It's not like this was, you had the German Workers' Party. Think of how this all started. You had this party that was like, hey, we're against just like in the progressive movement that we talked about, we're against the industrialists, the capitalists, they take advantage of the laborers. So that's how it all started. And then you rise up, and this guy's got these really evil thoughts about how Germany is going to become great again, and how we're going to do it. We're going to literally exterminate races of people. And it was really like, I'm sure there was other people that thought like him that he got to go along with him, but it's really like, it's him. He's the face of it. So hopefully those aren't things that you think are funny or cool, because you're more mature, man. Right, Case? Right, Gene? Should we start? We'll just get Benito Mussolini started. Remember that name? Benito Mussolini, huh? I think I said that many times to Caleb back then. I just met Caleb and knew he was Italian, so I was saying, Benito Mussolini, huh? Remember those days? Benito from Italy. A little older than Hitler. And I already mentioned that, I think I might have mentioned to you, that he was kind of Hitler's hero. Hitler saw what was going on in Italy. Again, socialist, born into a socialist family, becomes leader of the socialists. His mom was a teacher, so she wanted him to follow and be a teacher too. So he tried that for a minute. That didn't work out too well. He was much more. He had much bigger plans. Very egotistical. This Mussolini guy. He wasn't just going to settle for teaching kids. He had bigger fish to fry as he's rising up amongst the socialists in Italy. He too fights on the front lines in World War I. And even though he's a leader of socialists at that time were against the war. They weren't maybe quite pacifist. Have you ever heard that word before? A pacifist is someone that's like totally committed. No way, never would do war. It doesn't matter why, not going to do it. Socialists were kind of in that vein. But Mussolini, as being one of the leaders, that's where he kind of parted with him. He's like, no, we're Italian. We need to fight for Italy. So he went and fought on the front lines. Again, injured a couple times. And he's not the Führer, he's Il Duce. That's supposed to be the way the text is. That's a capital I and an L, so it looks the same. Il Duce. Actually, I think translates in Italian like chief. He's the leader. Hitler's the Führer, the leader. Mussolini's Il Duce. And he begins this movement called fascism. If you've ever heard of that word, when you study government and economics and power of government, you learn words like capitalism, democracy, socialism, communism, fascism. These are all governmental strategies, forms of leadership in countries. Well, this whole idea of fascism, modern day fascism, starts with Mussolini in 1922. Just want to see if anybody remembers. Anybody remember the symbol of fascism?
It was an axe with sticks around it.
Okay, so it's a bundle of sticks, basically, branches, rods, bundled together with an axe protruding out of the top end of it. What was the point of that? What's the point of that being the symbol? By the way, the symbol, he brought it back. This was a symbol of ancient Rome. Matter of fact, Mussolini, his idea in the 1920s is he's going to bring Italy back to the days of the empire. He's going to reestablish the great days of Rome. So he brings as a symbol with him one of the symbols of power in the Roman Empire. If you saw one of the higher ups in the Roman guard, or maybe he wasn't a soldier, but he was like in your city, I forget what the name, their actual title was, but they'd be walking around, and there'll be a picture of it tomorrow. But they got this, instead of a rifle, they're walking around, they got this long bundle, like 5-6 feet long sticks with an axe sticking out of it, symbolizing they're the power. That's what, and that's called, that thing was called a fasces. So FASCES. So then we take that symbol and we call this type of government fascism. So what is fascism? You'll hear different definitions from people from different places on the political spectrum. You'll get different definitions in the dictionary. Fascism is rooted in this idea of centralized, strong, centralized power. So obviously not rooted in the idea of individual liberty. The symbol of power, the fasces, symbolizing that power rests in me. He establishes that in 1922. That's right at the time. So he's already being established in Italy, while Hitler is just kind of cutting his teeth. You ever heard of that expression before? Hitler's just cutting his teeth on this whole leadership thing, and he looks at what's going on in Italy. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you. You got a lot done today, huh, Bella? Mussolini, huh?